Hello, everyone. Very excited to have us here. Thank you for being present. Today is a wonderful opportunity to collaborate with another mobilized maternal health individual and organization. And so, if you know me, or not, I'm Myla Flores, part of the Birthing Place Foundation, and working to open a birth center as well as uplift the goals of Mobilized Maternal Health Coalition. So I'll give a little definition of who we are. We're uniting reproductive justice organizations, and we're dedicated to reducing maternal and infant mortality by improving healthcare access in underserved communities and advocating for legislative measures, including various bills that we would like to continue putting together and some already existing. We're in strong support of the CPM license bill, paid leave after stillbirth, and other bills that we could talk about, and there's teach-ins about. But for today, a big part of what we're hoping to do is in this collaboration with Ancient Song and Earth app. We hope to share a lot about legislative policy change opportunity. And next, what day is that? This weekend, we have a part two, which has to do with institutional policy change. I would love for the people here to share in the chat your name, pronouns, any affiliation that matters to you or that intersects with maternal health, maternal infant health. And with that, I'd pass it over to you, Kennedy.
Thank you, Myla. Hi, everyone. I'm Kennedy, she, her pronouns. I'm a policy analyst at Ancient Song. And today we are going to do a little bit of conversation about kind of the political process from A to B, A to Z, really. And then we are going to get into some actions. So I'm very excited to be with you all today. Um, I'm really passionate about getting folks more interested and involved and learning about how they can be part of the political process, not just view it from the outside. A lot of times decisions are made for us. And it is intentionally kept from us, this understanding of how all of this functions. It's made so that we don't know how to get things across the finish line, how to get things from being an idea in our heads to a law actually on the books. And so hopefully today we can talk through a little bit what that actually means, what it looks like, and where our place in this process is. And spoiler alert, it's kind of everywhere. So there isn't one place for us to be. So with that, just a little bit about me. I'm a policy analyst, and then that means an in-song de facto organizer. And we focus on the whole person and not the parts through community advocacy, reproductive and birth justice, and then education. We aim to tackle some of the issues affecting communities of color. I have been involved in health advocacy and organizing since I was 12 years old. I grew up actually in an activist and organizing family. And so this is not just on me, but in me. And so I'm really grateful to be able to share some of the things that I've learned along the way with you all today. Outside of organizing, I am a huge reader. I'm a dancer. I grew up dancing. I also grew up swimming, so I love the ocean and any sort of body of water cannot get me out of it. I love to bake, and lately I've been called to like dye with indigo. So I'm gonna start figuring out that process this summer. So that has been really exciting because that is like not only a really beautiful dye, but it's a really powerful medicine that has been used all over the world. And so I really just like want to know more about its process, how it functions, and what its many uses are. So that is going to be really exciting for me, hopefully this summer. But with that, let's like get into some actual policy and politics. So today, our goal is a couple of things. Our overall goal is to like really situate ourselves in advocacy and policy, both in the legislative sphere and in the institutional sphere. We'll be doing more of that institutional work on Saturday, as Mila mentioned. But really, in order to like figure out what we want to do, how we want to do it, and why it's important to involve each other, we need to understand how the government functions, right? So first we're going to do a little like who's who in New York State government, which is an overview of the legislature and who's who in office, and then how a bill becomes a law, so the political process from A to Z. And then we're going to join some advocacy actions. We'll do some breakout rooms where you can really be a part of the action and sign on to some letters, tell your stories, and be able to start conversation about what's going on in your area as it relates to maternal health, midwifery, birthing centers, and the entire support and care ecosystem. So let's get started. So first, I want to talk a little bit about why doula advocacy and organizing matters. And I have an answer here, but I would love to hear from you all, like why you believe doulas should be involved in advocacy, not just for their clients, but in a larger political, social, economic, et cetera, capacity. And you can just unmute or put your answer in the chat.
I'll warm up the space with an answer and maybe even pick someone who may or may not have their hand up. Um, I find that advocacy and organizing matters. As a doula, I would uplift that many of us are enthusiasts of opportunity, access to midwifery and birth centers. I spoke with a midwife yesterday who shared so much about their limitations in really being available. And all of us have different ranges of perspective and availability and lived experiences. And I know that not all of us are doulas on the call. There's a whole spectrum of specialties here. But to answer this question, why doula advocacy and organizing matters, I would say because we intersect with a whole range of the environments and providers and our lived experience is a set that should be heard and should inform the changes that we collectively seek.
So I apologize that says doula advocacy. It really should say birth worker advocacy in general. I give this presentation to a variety of audiences, and so sometimes my edits slip through the cracks. My apologies, but I should say birth worker entirely. Go ahead, Jade. I saw your
Great.
unmuted.
Thanks, Nyla, and thanks, Kennedy. I'm Jada. And as you were saying that, I was thinking, I would argue, of course, we're very important as birth workers and as doulas in the moment of birth. But honestly, if we are involved in this activism and this work to change birth and the birthing spaces and the access to the kinds of care we need, we would need us a lot less. I mean, we'd still need us, but in a very different way. And we could just be supporting people, right, in the physical and emotional spaces as opposed to having to actually spend so much of our time and energy protecting our
Yeah.
clients. So that's kind of what just sparked for me is like I want to see all of this be different where we're birthing so that we can do what is our the kind of care that we actually want to be able to provide and to know that our clients are birthing in places and spaces and with care providers who actually center them and care about their experience.
I really appreciate what you were saying about kind of like there's the work that you do, like kind of on stage, if you will. And then there is all of the work that makes sure that the on stage stuff happens. There's that backstage support system. Oh, there's a whole, world of people that ensure that people are living healthy, comfortable lives. And so in order for people to be able to do their jobs, right, they need the space, the time, the energy, the comfort, the human interaction, right, that keeps them going. And a lot of times our laws, our systems prevent us from being able to take things like leisure time and vacation time, and prevents us from being able to care for each other by doing simple things like picking up a friend's kid from school, because we have so many different opportunity costs in our lives. And that's how the system is designed to make sure that you have to choose between one or the other. I can either do the thing that's offered to me, or I can help and care for my community. A lot of times what is offered to you is connected to your livelihood. And so making sure that we have like the space to be able to hold one another up is really, really important. Thank you, Jada. Anyone else? Any other thoughts? As Natasha said many times, those creating policies don't know how policies are being implemented. Very true. Very true. A lot of times we will we'll, advocate for a policy, we'll pass a law, and then it kind of gets left in the dust. We forget about it, or, we try to ask, hey, what's going on here? How are you doing this? What's going on? And people in various systems just stop answering the phone. They're like, I'll get to you in a couple of months when I have the answer. And it's like, no, I want to be actually a part of this process. I want to be making sure that this works for all of us. And so Charlene says this is so incredibly true. Holding space takes skill and resources. Yes, yeah. And it's a skill that you have to build up. And a lot of us don't have the resources, right, to be able to do that. Kim said, in addition to providing doula support during the entire perinatal period, my role as a birth worker and architect is to create awareness of the impact that environment, birth centers, midwifery model of care has on experiences, outcomes, racial disparities, and maternal mortality, and to amplify how we can improve the entire maternal health care system. Yes, 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 yes. We don't do enough, honestly, to talk about the way in which the environment impacts. And luckily, we have the Mobilized Maternal Health Coalition, who is here to make sure that the entire care ecosystem, which I always include the environment in that process, is taken care of, that we have a not just that there are people and resources there, but that we are in a larger physical, mental, social environment that supports us. So thank you, Kim. And here I just sort of have like kind of an answer that I hope reflects many of your own feelings, but it is my opinion that it's our responsibility to make sure that one another and our own needs are met. We can't do that without helping one another. We are inherently social beings, which means our freedom, our liberation, our livelihood are all inherently interlinked. And so when the system fails us, we need to have a collective body, right? We need to be able to come together so that one person doesn't feel isolated or alone when they have to speak up, when they have to really be able to press forward and charge forward so that we all can have better experiences. We need to be able to come together over things like a shared understanding, a shared goal, shared desires, and really be able to craft a strategy forward. So with that, let's get into a little bit more about the political process. So first, I'm going to give like a high overview of policy versus regulation versus legislation. And you'll hear people kind of toss all of these three words around, and sometimes it'll get a little jumbled. So first, I have here on the left this pyramid, and it is essentially a pyramid of authority. So at the top is the US Constitution. It has the largest authority in the land. That's why we have the Supreme Court to measure whether laws, policies, etc., are constitutional, whether they uphold the very foundation legislative bedrock of our of sorry, the dang distracted me of our government. And then under that, you have federal laws, and those also govern, right, the entirety of the country. A lot of them are opt-in or opt-out. You can kind of opt in or opt out sometimes also via the budget that you determine in your states, right? But federal law supersedes all legislation. Then you have your state legislation, your state laws, and those govern, what is going on in your state. In New York, we have a pretty strong home rule, which means that our state government has a lot of autonomy compared to other governments. So that's kind of a win, a boon for us. And then underneath laws, and laws can be also at the local level, right? That governs a local municipality. And those do not take precedent over state laws, which do not take precedent over federal. Um, but with those laws, underneath law, you have something like regulation. So first, legislation is made by legislators, usually in your state or federal Congress, or your local legislators or your city council people. They'll make local laws, and that determines the rights and responsibilities of individuals and authorities. And that can influence policy or it can come from policy. And we'll talk about why that is later. But I want you to hold in your head, right, that legislation is not policy. Legislation can come from policy and it can influence policy, but it is not policy. It's legislation, it's law. Regulation is a legal directive and it offers guidance for implementation and statutes. Usually it's created by governmental agencies and it'll restrict changes. It's different from rules. Rules implement, interpret, apply, or enforce laws or court decisions. Regulation is really just guidance for how to do things. And then policy is kind of your it's like an expression of what you wish to happen, how you want to see things go, right? That it sets guidance, recommendations, procedure, and protocol for things like programming, for that's why we talk about institute policy as being both legislative and institutional, because policy can govern how an institution functions, right? You'll talk about hospital policy, and those are the rules by which the hospital operates. And so policy can be created by institutions and the executive branch. Think about those executive orders. Those are policy, they're not laws. But the legislative branch cannot make policy. They make laws. They cannot make policy. Policy can be influenced by law and regulation, and it can influence law and regulation. But once again, it is not either one of those, right? It is guidance for how those things should function. Any questions so far? Cool beans. All right, let's keep it pushing. So now we're going to get into the legislative process. But first, you got to know a little bit of who's who in the government and how it functions. So overall, you have the state and federal branches of government, and they're all branches of government are in the United States are parallel. They function. Um, there is an executive, legislative, and judicial branch at every single level of government, right? So in the federal executive branch, that's your president and the cabinet. State is the governor and their cabinet. The city is the mayor and their cabinet. And towns, villages, it just depends on how your town or village is structured. But those people kind of at that executive level, they're in the executive branch. Then at the legislative branch, you have in the federal level, you have Congress, right? That's your House of Representatives and your Senate. It's bicameral. In New York City, New York State, our state legislative branch is also bicameral. That's our state legislature, your House of Representatives and your assembly people. And then in your city, that is your city council. It may also be a town select people, depending on where you are. And then judicial, they essentially are the court system, right? So federal, you have the US Supreme Court, Circuit Court, and District Courts. And then state courts, you have the Court of Appeals, the Appellate Court, and trial courts. And everything kind of moves up from the trial court basis, right? So you start something off in trial court, and then it'll go up to the appeals, Appellate Court, and then Court of Appeals. Same thing happens in the federal court, District, Circuit, Supreme. Um, so there's that, right? So now we're going to get a little deeper into New York State Senate. So with the New York, oh my goodness, this is supposed to have other words. I apologize. But the New York Senate president this is what happens when you have like four presentations in one on one day. But the Senate president, I apologize, is essentially the leader of the Senate. They are focused on presiding over Senate sessions. They like break tie votes. They make sure the rules are followed. In New York State, it is, oh, sorry. Usually this is all here. I apologize.
I thought it was
Oh,
Angela Stewart Cousins.
it is Andrea Stewart Cousins. And the speaker is Carl Hastie. And then the Senate Majority Leader is also Andrea Stewart Cousins. And the Assembly Majority Leader, can someone help me out real quick? Mariah, do you remember who the Assembly Majority Leader is right now? I am so sorry, you all.
No worries. Um, Hopefully somebody can help us out on that one. Um, And this is a really great indication of just like that awesomeness of being able to be informed about our own legislators. And we can't have all the information at our fingertips, but sometimes we have to look it up. And that's part of what we'll be doing together at some point today in the portion of time where we get into our breakout rooms. So, yeah.
The minority leader is Robert G. Ort. My apologies. And the assembly leader, ooh,
I'm going to give a shout out to the folks who are in the chat and the different representations. As you guys know, I asked you to say your names, affiliations, and a bill that
yeah.
matters to you could be a bonus. Feel free to interrupt me at any time. But I just want to acknowledge there are midwives here, folks who appreciate and want to uplift the CPM licensure bill, the access clarification, the access advertising and insurance coverage for doulas, um, increasing support to the community in general. And we have folks who are um, um, from a better balance, advocating for uh, medical leave for New York workers reform. Um, and we have a hospital-based doula in Albany working on a program integrating doulas um, into the care on the L&D floor. So yeah, that's just a bit of who's represented here in the room. Thank you for being here.
And thank you, Charlene, for putting that in the chat. I really appreciate you. So right now, the Senate President is Lieutenant Governor Antonio Delgado. The Majority Leader is Andrew Stewart Cousins. The Minority Leader is Robert Ort. For the Assembly, the Speaker of the Assembly is Carl Hastie. The Assembly Majority Leader is Crystal Peoples-Stokes. And the Minority Leader is William Barclay. So thank you. I appreciate for that collaborative moment. While it's been a long week, so I appreciate your patience, everyone. So when we talk about local municipalities, those are much more local governments. You're going to have to find out how your local township or cityship is structured. But in New York State, we have 62 counties, 62 cities, 932 towns, 555 villages, and 697 school districts. And I wanted to put that out there because these are all ways in which you can participate in local government. There is county level politics, there's city level. Towns also have their own governmental structure, and I think school districts is a really important one because it has been really important in the last couple of years. A lot of the fascists have been able to manipulate school board voting, school board elections in order to get more um, fascism at the local level. And so it's really important that we, temper those as battlegrounds, that we are able to keep those focuses on children, while also understanding the place that they have in our political structure, right? Those local elections are very, very important. So local municipalities will create local law that doesn't violate state constitutions or any other previously established law. They will also recommend action to the legislature and or elected officials. You'll see this in resolutions from city council, often urging the governor to take action or offering urging the legislature to take action. And each structure of the government is local to the municipality type, and it's dependent on size. So whether you are in a town or a village or a city is dependent on how many people live in that given area. And that township structure, how you elect folks will be specific to what kind of structure you're in. And there are also unincorporated municipalities which have a much more diminished political action capacity because many of them do not have any sort of local government to govern their actions. So that is a third kind of municipality that is often not talked about. So in this moment, we'll take a pause. We'll use this form right here to really talk to find out who your local representatives are, share it with the Mobilize Maternal Health Coalition. And that will help us with future actions to be able to talk to you more directly, get you in touch with legislators, and figure out where your influence lies. There's that form. And then here are the Assembly and Senate directories. So just take a few minutes, fill out the form. Go ahead, Halima.
Hey, y'all. I just wanted to say that if you're not acting, you're being acted upon. And so it's very important for folks to be active in their communities. And I also wanted to share a video that I often use when I do legislative advocacy education. It's a video by Edward Liu called Power, and it just shows all of the different ways that people have power. We use that in our community. I'm a part of this organization, this nonprofit organization of parents that do child welfare abolition or child welfare transformation work. And so we do a lot of legislative advocacy, and we go up to Albany a lot and speak to a lot of the folks that you spoke about in this meeting. And I just wanted to share those pieces. And thank you. I am complete.
Thank you for sharing. Really appreciate that. And if you all have other things you'd like to share, other resources for thinking about this, please do. Make sure this is like a learning community, things where we can share resources and tools with one another. And just give me a thumbs up when you're done with the form and we can keep going.
I think we also said approximately, just so that people can take some intentional time, maybe by 1:05, hopefully, everyone can be complete with that form. And I recognize that some parts of the form take thought and some of it's really quick and easy. So thank you for filling it out. And Halima, when you mentioned you wanted to share the video, did you want to drop it in the chat for reference for the folks here in the future?
I sure can.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just had one more thing to say. The more I learn about policy and legislation and the way that government works, the more and more I'm confused about how this administration is operating. I feel so lost because I'm also in a policy fellowship right now. And so it's like I'm learning all of these things, and I do a lot of advocacy and activism. And it's like now things are starting to make sense while also being so confusing. I just wanted to share that with folks.
Well, and a lot of it is like, how much do we actually have to listen to? And how much, I mean, it's all impactful, right? Because there's a goal and a hope and a desire behind every single action. Um, but sometimes it's like, okay, how far is this going to be actually able to go, right? Because a lot of these things, like I said, are policies, they're not laws. And so they are not mandates to be followed. However, they can be deemed unconstitutional. They can be blocked by judges. They can be blocked by courts. And so that interaction, like, always lets me know how heavily intricate and interwoven the system is, to be able to have those checks and balances, whether they're able to be functional or whether they're able to be manipulated, is really critical and crucial. Yeah, absolutely on purpose to limit our power.
And I also just want to name in the journey of deepening work in organizing advocacy and strategizing with our other community members. It is something that, as Jada said in the beginning, it's like this is not necessarily what we came into the work expecting to do. So as we do it, we're figuring it out. And I can definitely attest to the aspect of learning as we go, getting more clear, getting more confused, getting more clear. And so I find sessions like this really valuable, Kennedy, and appreciate that we can acknowledge that truth, Halima. And as much advocacy as I recognize and appreciate that you're doing for our communities, that we're still at a place where we're figuring it out. And it's very comforting to be in the company of others who really care as deeply as we all do, differently working in ways that can positively contribute to the collective change.
I say, Mila.
Okay, so it's 106, so let's keep going. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how a bill becomes a law. So at a high level, it starts with ideation, then it goes to drafting and introduction, then committee, where it will be then, in order to leave committee, it has to be voted out of committee to go to floor vote. And they will decide whether to pass the bill or reject it or send it to another committee for more amendments, for more commentary, etc. Then they may bring it to another floor vote. Once it passes one body, right, as we said, it's bicameral. So if a bill starts in the assembly, it has to pass the assembly and go to the Senate, or if it starts in the Senate, it will pass in the Senate and then go to the assembly for yet another vote. Sometimes there's companion bills where there's one in both to make it to fast track it. I say all that to say both bodies have to sign off on the bill for it to become for it to pass, right? And then, depending on where we are in the session, the governor has approximately 10 to 30 days to sign a bill into law. So if session is open, he has 10 days. If it is closing, he has 30 days. He, she, they have 30 days to make sure that that bill gets signed into law or make another action. We'll talk about what that other action is momentarily. But first, let's talk about drafting and policy ideas. So all bills start with an idea. It could be from a constituent. It could be from a politician's own concerns. It could be from the concerns of an organization or a state individual, of a state official. But at the end of the day, you got to have an idea. You want to see something happen, something changed. Ideally, once the idea is brought to a politician or they have that idea, ideally they would consult expert and community opinion. I say that ideally because a lot of times this does not happen. But the goal, right, is to get in there at that ground level, to get as many voices and opinions possible to craft a bill that reflects what exactly it is you want to change. And then it gets sent to a drafting, either the drafting body, so either the New York Legislative Bill Commission, or lawyers from certain vested groups will submit a draft to the legislature with legal language that would essentially be the first draft, if you will, of a bill, of a law. And so then from there, we go to committee process. So they will, once it gets introduced, they'll talk about it. They'll decide which committee they believe it should belong to, right? Health, women, transportation, etc. And they will have it read in committee. And oh, before I back up, when you introduce it, the representative introducing the bill is considered the sponsor. They will try to find other people to sponsor the bill, saying that they essentially support it, that they want to see it passed, that they will essentially be champions talking to other legislators to pass the bill. It's sent for revision to committee, to the relevant committee, where it's edited, reworked, thrown out. And in that committee, they'll be asking for outreach. They'll be doing outreach and feedback to make sure that there's public hearings. Ideally, I say all of this, and ideally, once again, it does not always happen this way. But ideally, they'll host public hearings to make sure that they can hear constituents' concerns, ideas, and questions. So that will be places where you'll often find your testimony useful, right? They'll ask for testimony from certain groups, certain organizations to be able to offer their 2 cents. That's actually where I met Mila for the first time, was she was giving testimony up in this state legislature. And it's really a great opportunity to get your voice heard. And they'll try to have this moment to kind of work it out. Ideally, you're going to hear me say this like a whole lot, that it goes in our favor, right? They'll put it through amendment processes, they'll write it, rewrite it, add different things. They'll talk about it on the floor. This is where that debate comes in as well. They'll talk about it in committee, and at which point it will come to a vote. If it comes to a vote and it is passed, it will leave committee and it will go back to the floor where it may be decided that it's totally cool for a vote, where it can be either, sent back to a committee or another committee to be edited or several times again. And then it is voted on then and there by the entire membership after it leaves. If it's like, oh, okay, we've read this bill, and even though it was in health, I really think the Women's Committee should have a crack at this. They'll send it into committee. They'll do all their amendments, their hearings, their testimony, all of that. They'll say, okay, I'm cool with this leaving committee. Let's all vote on it. Majority vote, it'll go back to the floor. Once it goes back to that floor, the majority of the membership must vote aye or yes. So 32 out of 63 senators, 76 out of 150 assembly members for it to pass. And this is also where that like many different paths passing the House and then having to go to the Assembly comes in. So if it passes the House, it must then go to the Assembly, go through that process all over again, and then be passed in order for it to be signed into law. Or, like I said, they will try to introduce the same bill in both legislatures, right? They'll try to introduce it in the Assembly and the House. And that's to cut down on that time of like having to wait for it to go through both houses. If it can go as fast as possible through both houses, you won't have to do that one after the other. So that's where you hear that term companion bill come in. So now, once they've passed a bill or rejected it, if they've rejected it, it'll go back and start this process all over again. If you want it, if you're really passionate about it, you can always bring it up. The good thing about introducing a bill is that it will always be introduced. You will always find a record of something. So you can always go back into legislative history on the Senate website and see what has been introduced. You can see what people have talked about in the past and use that knowledge to decide what sort of strategy you want to take. But if it passes both houses, the governor then has to take action to either sign the bill into law or veto it. If the legislature is in session, so from January to June, the governor has 10 days to decide whether he wants to sign it into law or veto it. If they're not in session, the governor has 30 days. So, for example, if you all were here in 2019, you will know that there was a bill essentially trying to make sure that doulas who took Medicaid, they had to be recertified. And it was very terrible. It would cause a lot of people to have to pay more for certification. It wasn't culturally competent certification. It was adding a whole bunch of ticker tape and red tape to every single process in order to get Medicaid reimbursed. The thing is, they passed that bill on June 23rd. It was a Thursday. Last day of the session was June 24th. They didn't tell anyone about it. That meant that nobody had any say the entire time they were running that bill through the legislature. So when it got to when it passed, we now looked at each other and said, so what are our options? When we realized that because it was June 23rd, we had 30 days instead of the usual 10, we had a lot more time to organize to say, okay, let me talk to folks all around the state and talk to them about what they want to happen to this bill, what they want. Do they want the governor to sign it? Do they want it to be vetoed? Right? How do they want this to go forward? We were able to gather people, get a cohesive strategy down, and ultimately defeat that bill because we had that time of those 30 days. It's a lot shorter time span when you have 10 days. Those are those days where you're like up all night, like, oh my God, what am I going to do? How do we make sure that we talk to everybody? 30 days is a lot more functional of a timeline. However, if the bill is vetoed, it returns to the legislature, and usually the governor will have notes on its rejection. Sometimes they don't, but ideally they will. The governor can also fail to act, meaning they do absolutely nothing. If the governor fails to act, it automatically becomes law. If they sign it, it automatically becomes law. But if it's vetoed, right, it can be reintroduced. They can either amend the bill and the process starts all over again, or if the governor vetoes it and the legislature is like, I'm not having it, they can veto it. I mean, they can overturn it. So that's another opportunity, right, for lobbying, for advocacy. If the governor vetoes it, you would have to drum up 2/3 of the legislative body to overturn the governor's veto, in which case the bill will automatically become law, right? So essentially, if you're looking around, the governor vetoes it, you're like, I know 2/3 of these people support it. You can gather them up, right? Convince them, etc. That's a lobbying, my apologies. We can have conversations, excuse me, about what is important to us and educate them on the issues. And if that shifts their opinion, 2/3 of which, then it will automatically become a law. You don't have to worry about the governor signing anything. So, thank you so much for that lovely and wonderful little teach-in moment. I apologize for the slip up earlier, but we got right back on track. It was real quick, but I hope that it was able to answer some of your questions. And right now, I want to give you time for question and answer before we go into our breakout rooms. So please fire away.
Thank you for the presentation. It was awesome.
Sure, of course. I see Mariah's hand.
Thank you so much for this presentation. This is really helpful. I have a quick question that I wanted to check in with you. Obviously, you have to get the bill through committee, but it doesn't seem, I'm like kind of curious about what kind of levers advocates can keep pushing or pulling on to make sure that it can actually get to the committee like vote. And that process seems to be very opaque. And from my understanding, it feels like it's not necessarily like it either gets there or it doesn't. But I'm wondering if you have any other insight on how advocates can try to make sure that things actually do get through their original, like if it's in labor, how it goes to Ways and Means, or how if it gets in labor, how it goes to finance. But yeah, also really wanted to say that this was like an incredible presentation, but that is my question. Thanks.
Thank you. And yes, I feel like I'm not going to be able to give you like the most satisfying answer. A lot of it comes through conversations, like being able to have in-depth relationships with people, like legislators, with people in the office to figure out where a bill is going and how, is really critical. So like if you are able to have those types of conversations, you can ask questions like, what is this going to look like to have to pay for, what are budget concerns, right? Are they worried about financing this sort of project? What are they worried the costs are to the taxpayers? You can ask those sorts of questions to determine the direction. I can't say that you have like a whole lot of control in that scenario. The idea is really to just keep pushing and keep an eye on things. And I think also like this is where those community levers are really useful as well, because you can't necessarily force a legislator to do anything or a committee to do anything. What you can do is tell a really specific story to your community members, right? So you can sit there and say, hey, this bill has been stuck in committee for 3, 4 months. It's not going anywhere. We need to put pressure on our legislators to push it somewhere, to at least make it go maybe towards budget, maybe towards something else, right? And I think that's really also where like that strong community piece comes in, having that community pressure is sometimes I think more effective. Having more people who understand what's going on and are able to say, no, 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 this is exactly what we want. We can call up those legislators. We can figure out especially figuring out who the chair of those committees are is really important. Um, because they will have the most say in whether something comes to a vote in committee. The committee chair they'll call for the vote actually, and they'll say, hey, we want to bring this to a vote. So, or they'll call a public hearing. They're the ones who are in charge of that committee process. So you really want to get sweet on their side as well. Yeah, I hope that answers your question, Mariah. Go ahead, Tisha.
Hey, Kennedy, thank you so very much for this really informative presentation. As somebody who's been doing lobbying around access to midwifery for about 30 years now in the New York State legislature, I also had a question that was similar to Mariah's with regard to bills that get stuck in committees. And I do understand your answer, so thank you for that. But I think a more general question that might be helpful to just hear your insights about is what is the best way, how important is it, and what is the best way to engage the actual constituents of the lawmakers that are in the committees that have the most sway or power over your particular bill? At that time, for example, I'm a certified professional midwife. I'm trying to get a CPM licensing bill passed. And we have a lot of midwives, both currently licensed and wanting to be licensed, at the fore, at the table, in the discussions, doing the lobbying. We also have a body of constituents, clients, consumers, families across the state. Can you just talk a little bit about how the midwives themselves try to move something, and then how is the best way to engage people who are going to be most impacted by the issue, by the bill, and by the law?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really wonderful question, Tisha. Thanks you so much. Um, I love this question, I think, because it like brings out the like nerd side in my brain. Which is that like you want to get really familiar with not just your constituents, but also like the districts and the geography. So if I were thinking about passing a bill, and you're looking at it stuck in committee and you're like, I want to put pressure on these legislators to push this out of committee, I would take a look at what districts that they are in. I would then try to host some sort of I like to call it collective or political education sessions in those districts, calling specifically for certain populations or demographics. Maybe you'll have a conversation specifically for families. Maybe oh yeah, thank you. Maybe you'll have a conversation specifically for midwives. You want to bring those people together to talk about their commonalities, their common issues, and to have a large conversation about what that bill could do for them. If you were doing it from an advocacy standpoint, right, what we're talking about is underlining the issues that exist in the bill, right? Advocacy and lobbying are different things. So I'm going to speak to what lobbying would look like. Um, but if you were advocating, right, you can't necessarily tell people to take a certain action. What you can do is let them know what the bill is about. You can talk to them about the issues that the bill touches on, and you can ask questions, right, as to what they think should happen. That's how I like to do that in an advocacy space because it folds people in, it makes people feel part of the process. And then if I were lobbying, what I would do is in those collective education sessions, it would still be that like push and pull, right? Learning about what issues affect people, how they want to go about it, but also telling them that this is why I think this action should take place, right? And being able to tell my story, have other people tell their stories about how that affects them, and telling them that this is the action, having it really easy in bite-sized pieces, something that they can take part in either right there and then, or won't take very much time at all. Or maybe you have a larger plan that you'd like to acclimate them to. You tell them way ahead of time. This is what we're going to have at lobby day, X, Y, and Z, and we're going to make sure that you have meetings scheduled with your legislator. You're going to make sure that you talk to people in who are in certain committees, right? You're going to make sure you identify that on Saturday, we'll talk a little bit more about it, but like kind of the power ecosystem, the players who are would be able to push that bill forward. You're going to look at the levers of power, what positions they hold in the committee, outside of the committee. You're going to see who their constituents are, gather them up, and really be able to have that conversation, have people tell their stories straight to their faces, right? If I didn't have X, Y, and Z, then this would have happened to me. Or this did happen to me because I didn't have X, Y, and Z, right? Getting them together is so much more powerful than having them do it alone, too. It makes people feel connected to each other and supported. But it also makes people feel like they have a strong base from which to tell a really vulnerable experience. So I hope that answers your question. And I would ask them straight up, this is what I want you to do. Like after you tell your story, this happened to me. Because I didn't have this, because of that, I need you to make sure that you bring this. If I were talking to the chair, for example, I need you to bring this to a vote in committee. Or I need you to get us collect sponsors, maybe on the other side of the aisle for bipartisan support, right? Having that specific ask when you're lobbying is also really important too. Any other questions before we go into our breakout rooms? Take a sip of water. We have been talking forever.
Hi. Sorry I was late. I was on another Zoom for certification. But as a mom in community and also an Earth ambassador, sometimes some of this can seem like overwhelming. But how do I guess, get in contact? Please, Zara, sorry. How do I get in contact with, I guess, more like-minded people like you guys to get kind of my story out too? Like, so this was an impromptu hummingbird, and this was, I want to say, that was fear-based, but also uh like an empowerment moment for myself because this wasn't the plan.
Take a deep breath, take your time.
I knew for a fact if I went to a hospital, either myself or my daughter wouldn't make it. I knew it. I felt it in my being. So I had to make a decision because I have an older daughter to make sure that I would be here. That overall decision It shouldn't. It's not something that people should have to make. And this was not the plan. I just had a question. Um, so I've been on the advocacy side. I've actually met Mila at the Tanisha Evans rally. So I just want to know, how do I, one, get my voice heard? Two, what, as a mom in community, how do I get other moms to know that their voice is important, and like we have a say, kind of, if that makes sense. Sorry, my kids are in the background crazy.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm really sorry that that happened to you, and I feel like it makes it even harder sometimes to just get out of bed every day, to want to keep going, and to have to make decisions of to be able to still care for your family. Is really difficult, and it stays with you forever. So thank you so much for sharing. And I'm so sorry that it was a difficult experience. And I say that to say also that like that's also why we're here, is to make sure that you feel supported and connected to a group of people who understand what you're going through and what you've been through, and that you have a story to tell. This space is really here not to hold space for you, but also to feel like we have the confidence together to talk more about how we see our own experiences being foundational to change. And there's a few ways. So one is like we're having more teach-in sessions, more conversation sessions. There's another one on Saturday where it's going to be in person as well in the Bronx.
Okay.
So there are those like conversational opportunities, but also as it relates, because also like, you don't have to be, this doesn't have to be your political home. Sometimes your political home is right just here with you. And
Mm-hmm.
um in order, I think, to, I think we all have to develop our confidence together, if that makes sense. Having more practice sessions, having um, sessions where we learn how to develop our story in a way that doesn't re-traumatize us, right? Because every time we tell that, like, I have things too where it's like every time I tell that story, I get choked up all over again, and it's not a problem. It's like my body remembering what happened. It's my body reminding me like what I've been through and how it feels to be in such a difficult situation. Those feelings are important because it reminds you how to keep moving forward. We also need the space, right? And the confidence to be able to make it so that it doesn't hurt so bad every time we say it. And so that involves us getting together to learn how to craft our stories for different audiences, right? So the story you tell
Right,
on
absolutely.
social media will be different than the story that you tell to a mom talking to you, right? The story you tell to to a legislator is going to be a different story than the one that you tell a hospital staff person, right? So being able to fine tune it for those audiences is very important. And I mean, I don't want to like overextend the coalition in any way, but I would love to like work on some story crafting sessions together. I don't do that personally, but I have done it. I'm not like super skilled, so I would say that we would probably need to like find someone to facilitate that for us. But I
I'd
think,
definitely be interested in that for sure.
yeah, Mila, I mean, I put that, I just put something on everyone.
I
So
love it. Honestly, it's great. It's important. Part of my awareness in when we go out into our breakout rooms is I know that one of the three invites people to have a story, and I'm cognizant as this comes up that some of those stories are painful, and unfortunately, we all come to the work with a unique set of experiences that are not okay. And that's why we're here hoping to change things. So, yes, Kennedy, we'll do a more thoughtful component of that. And today in the breakout rooms, I think it's a nice opportunity to oh look, this is great. I was waiting also. for Samantha to come. So I think it's a nice segue into the breakout rooms. Kennedy, do you agree?
Yes. Oh, I have one last thing to
Okay,
say on
cool.
that. Which is to say also that like we also need to remember that we as individuals and communities have our own resources.
Mhm.
Like they have tried to say that it is in depletion, diminished, that we don't have enough, that we're in this like scarcity mindset. And so like moving with abundance, feeling like even if we don't have what we think we need, realizing that like it is powerful to share your story, even if you're just having dinner with someone. I always like to say that like mutual aid is a really wonderful building block for community. So if you're like, I don't know how to tell my story, but I do know that like moms in my area need a hot meal, like just inviting people over to hang out, eat some food together. Maybe you just start talking about what it's like to, raise a 2-year-old in the Bronx. I don't know. And from there, it's a lot easier to start sharing your story as well. If you're able to be like, hey, we're here together. Maybe we're doing a diaper swap. You got size sixes, I got size twos, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm gonna echo also what came
It
up
is.
here. Sorry.
No, I was just saying thank you to both of you. I appreciate like the just that perspective on it and just different ways to just, get this because I felt like this is something I kind of hold in a lot. I work with Tabia closely, so she knows and it's like, it's just I don't know. I feel like I haven't been ready, but now it's like the way things are going, I'm more ready, if that makes sense. So that's why I kind of made it my business, my daughter's face, to kind of be here after the other meeting was when Tabby told me what's still going on. I was very happy to just, kind of hop in. So this, whatever resources you guys have, I definitely do want to come in and just learn more and to, be a force in some way with the movement.
Yeah, we appreciate you being here.
Yes. Um, it reminds me of what we talked about before you got here, Ziska, just being able to navigate some of this complicated work in community is huge. And the fact that you are seeking to be in community and it's a beautiful thing to have each other right now in a time that can feel really isolating. So I hope that as many people as possible come this weekend. We'll do a more notable like closing and reminding of what's happening this weekend. But for now, before we go into the breakout room, I wanted to ask people. This came up in the chat, like in a DM, if we would be good with taking a screenshot at the end of all of us, or if there's an appropriate time that we want to before people slip off, that would be nice. I also dropped in the chat here some of the coalition priorities and appreciate all of the work that has happened so far. This is one of many teach-ins that have included birth center access, CPM licensure, paid leave after stillbirth, and the overall TDI component. And we had a day of action, and there's various ways you can catch up and learn, because I believe that even when people are seeing the playbacks, that there is a true opportunity to understand how and what affects us and maternal health and reproductive justice. So just want to encourage people to stay in touch in that way. So the teach-in ideas today, and it seems we could have three breakout rooms right now. Excuse me, I said teach-in. You get it. The three breakout rooms aim to be one. Um, so we have a list of. Hey, Kennedy, do you want to share screen? Thank you. Um, we have a list of legislators that we're working specifically to target regarding one of the bills that the coalition. Oh, here, I'll start with this personalize and support letter. So basically, this is shifting like during the course of since a conversation yesterday. There are templates that have been preset for letting our legislators know that we want greater access to midwifery and birth centers. And there was an element of wanting the governor to pay closer attention to the request on her desk to support birth centers statewide. Meanwhile, this may shift. I'm just being transparent about what it's shifting to. Sorry, Kennedy, not yet. Okay. Um, it's potentially going to shift to asking our legislators to hold the governor and the DOH accountable for the fact that the midwifery birth center bill has not been implemented and to release the regulations that we've been awaiting since 2016. Okay, so that's a long time. That's one. And then in a second breakout room, we will have the passing TDI. And so ultimately, temporary disability insurance is encompassing of various things. And what when we're talking in the from the lens of maternal health and the paid leave after stillbirth, these are parts of what is harmful to postpartum people who are put back into work settings after they've just had a stillbirth. So they are in an a recovery position in the most vulnerable time, and they are essentially not able to access their rightfully due insurance opportunities. So this is my, revisioning of let me just say my effort to summarize it. But we have basically a group of legislators who remember the part where Kennedy was teaching us about how there are some people who are not yet supporting, and maybe they are not yet supporting because they don't know and they just need a bit of convincing or people, constituents from their community to tell them, hey, this is important to me, right? Or maybe they are resistant for other reasons that we don't know about, or we do. Whatever the case, this is an opportunity. We had a few people fill out the form, and we saw that, I was going to try to take time to look at to see if there were targeted individuals who we would like to receive a personalized letter to get them to have a meeting with an MMHC representative so we could tell them why they need to also sign on to this. And then a third one, is part right here. It's a TDI push button. And I think that all of us can participate in that really easily right before we go. So if we could break out in maybe 2 rooms instead of 3, what do you think? That would be awesome. Um, we didn't talk about this logistic, but do we want to just create the breakout rooms and then people choose where they'd like to go, or do
I
we
have
want to break?
them. I created them.
Oh, sweet.
And it's not assigned, so just choose wherever you want to be. And we'll be there doing the thing.
I want to name that Mariah, raise your hand, say hi, wave. Um, has a great understanding of TDI, as well as Jesse and Samantha. And I will be in the birth center room. Nice to see you, Alexis Davis. Sorry, had to. Um, yes. So, shall we?
They
I,
should be open.
what's that?
Okay, they should be open now.
Okay. A part of me wants to take, never mind. Do you guys see a breakout room? If you go to your I don't know, what is that, the toolbar at the bottom, you'll see 2 breakout rooms and then everyone's just unassigned right now. And then you can choose one. Should we take a picture before the breakout rooms or at the end? I gotten which? At the end?
Maybe before, just in case people have
Or
to.
okay.
Um,
Let's close screen.
Move people.
Stop sharing. Okay, will you guys come on for the pic? Kim, will you take the pic? Okay, good, because I know there's a set of buttons.
Okay, is everyone ready? Should I just do, it's a screenshot. It's not a special, is there a special way to do it or just a
No,
screenshot?
just a screenshot. Yeah.
Okay, is everybody ready?
I'll
Okay.
count to
um,
3 and then maybe we could what? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Uh-oh, a couple more people hopped on and
Oh,
Tamika, last chance, but you're good either
okay.
way. Okay, ready?
We'll do one more time. Okay, let me get ready. Okay.
1,
Count down, Mila.
2, and 3.
Thank
Okay,
you, everybody.
all right. So we're going into our breakout rooms, guys. If you need help getting put into a breakout room, just say in the chat 1 or 2. How about that? And one is called oops.
Oh, Tabia, that looks so nice.
Yes, I am.
I'm gonna pause this recording.
Am I?
Awesome, welcome back. We won't go too much over, but I am thankful. We're all thankful to still be together right now, and hopefully we can share a thing or two about what happened, what went down in your breakout room. If there could be a representative from the breakout rooms, and then also I'm gonna look at the chat. I see some things coming in, and we'll talk more. Uh, anyone from the breakout rooms want to summarize or share a word or two? Oh, yeah, absolutely. And following the summaries, we're gonna give information on how to stay in touch. And we do have a resource folder where we've been compiling resources post teach-ins so that people can easily access them. So we'll send that in the follow-up.
Okay, so very briefly, our breakout room, the goal was to piggyback on everyone filling out that Google form in which they determined who their state senator or state assembly member is, and to begin to craft a letter that incorporates our personal stories as one of 3 categories. One was our experience as an individual or birthing person or community member. The second was our experience as a birth worker. The third was our experience as a member of an organization. And this will be a letter in support of going back to the 2016 midwifery birth center licensure regulations and the fact that nothing really actually happened, and now here we are 9 years later. And to re-amplify that bill and to share our personal stories as a way to be most impactful. So this sort of got the juices flowing, and we have 3 templates that we can work with. Yeah, and if I forgot anything, please feel free to jump in. And thank you, Mila, for creating those templates.
I just want to echo what Kim said, and I think this is going to be the beginning of a few of those teach-ins, and I'd love to see more community members like Ziska who are vulnerable and open about not understanding how to necessarily digest this and then find their voice so that we can work in numbers. And look forward to the Saturday event.
Someone from the other breakout room, please.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for all of this space. It's really great to be here with everybody, but we were discussing a little bit of the landscape about temporary disability insurance and where we are and making sure that we could get this bill passed this year as quickly as possible. And discussing phone banking and our email. And I will drop the push button here. It's pretty easy to fill out. It will tell you exactly who your assembly member and your senator are. And then we also did make a call for physical phone calls with a script, which we can email and make sure everybody has out. And I don't know if I missed anything, but thank you again for. I know also dropped the business letter support. So if you have a business and you are supportive of temporary disability insurance, please sign on and pass it along to your friends. This business opposition.
So as a follow-up, all the registrants who came to this, all the folks who registered and came to this will receive a message with the template letters, the info that Mariah is also dropping in the chat. And hopefully, especially with the take action link, we could take a minute now to actually do that. It's a very quick ask, and it's really great that they have it all set up that way. And so we hope to have more of these kind of direct, simple actions for more of our community. So feel free to please share it. And then in the follow-up, you'll also receive access to our MMHC resource folder where the previous teach-ins and the resources, the related resources will be available. What time? Saturday. Let's see. Saturday. I think it's 1:30. 1:30. Okay, good. 1:30 to 3. We're gonna have some refreshments and there's a good crew that have already RSVP'd. So we hope to see you. Should be a nice time. 3307 Rochambeau Avenue. I'll type it in here too. I think I did that right. Okay, it's one number, 3307. So with that, everyone, if everyone is feeling complete, I'm gonna close us off with a great big thank you. If you want to drop a word of how you're feeling right now in the chat or out loud, you can do that. Ultimately, the biggest thing that seems to be a recurring theme right now is we're doing this in community and we got to figure this out together. And thankfully, we have more and more tools coming our way. And we hope that we continue to engage with these tools and bring more of our community into the fold. Pumped. Stopping the core